Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon Pacific time and then 3 p.m. Eastern time, at least until October, and then all of that changes. Time changes. See, because Arizona doesn't change. So I'd like to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp, BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. They are an online counseling company. I've been getting some really good feedback from people using them. They're very happy with them, which makes me very happy. So if you're outside of the United States and you're having to wait forever and a day to get into a counselor, get on to betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez and they can set you up with an American counselor here. You guys will have to figure out the time difference, all that sort of good stuff. If you are in a small town or you're in a state and you don't like the counselor that you have that's near you, get on to betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez. They will set you up with a licensed professional counselor, master's level or PhD level. So thank you, betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez. All right, so let's dive into this week's questions. I just don't get it. Why does my ex continually badmouth me to my children? What is he doing? Well, it's called parental alienation. So parental alienation is where the opposing parent, the opposite parent, who's usually disordered with a mental health issue, usually a personality disorder, will badmouth the other parent trying to get the kids on their side. It's exceedingly immature. And they overshare and they tell the kids that it's all the other parent's fault, that the divorce happened and poor them, and they play the victim. And then, of course, the kids feel sorry for them and start taking it out on the other parent. What the disordered parent doesn't realize is that this is going to screw those kids up and they don't care. That's the really sad thing, is that these parents that participate in these kind of things do not care. They don't care what they're doing to the kids. They're using the kids as pawns. So when you see that happening, you must insist on counseling. Must. And in your divorce decree, I've said this 100,000 million times, demand that the kids get counseling and you get to have a say in who they go to, because inevitably the disordered parent will either pick somebody who knows nothing about personality disorders or somebody brand new to the business or somebody that they can easily manipulate. And they'll get in there first and they'll try to tell their side of the story. And for them, it's all about the win. And in their twisted and sick mind, they need to have everybody on their side, including the kids. So yeah, that's what they're doing. And all you can do is be consistent. Be kind, be consistent, keep pointing out the incongruencies in what the opposing spouse is saying. Well, he's telling you this, but do you see me doing this? And you just point out the incongruencies. It's called parental alienation. Dwayne Robert has a great channel called Dad Surviving Divorce. So go check out that channel, and he talks in depth about this. And this is a common thing that's done. Men and women do engage in this. It's not just women doing this to guys. Guys do it to women as well. And or same sex. It doesn't matter. All they care about is the win, and they don't give a damn about the kids. They really don't. And it's really pathetic because it ends up harming the children, because the children then live with this smear campaign going on against the opposite parent. Meanwhile, that little kid is going, wait a minute, I'm half them. So if you hate them, do you hate me? And so that creates all sorts of self-esteem issues, and they don't care. The other thing that it does too is that the kids are now afraid of the abusive parent, and they will side with them in a misguided attempt to stay out of trouble. So they think if they join in on the smear campaign, that somehow they'll stay out of trouble and everything will be fine with that parent. It isn't usually until their later teenager years that they figure out what's going on, if ever. Sometimes they never figure it out, but a lot of times they figure it out in the teenage years. So that is why they are doing that. I have PTSD. I get triggered. How long does triggering last? So when we have been through trauma, it can last a lifetime. But it depends on the intensity of the triggering. So for example, I still get triggered. Things happen that trigger me, you betcha. Usually I'm able to recognize when I'm being triggered and I'm having a flashback, and I'm able to go, okay, this is a flashback. I need to breathe. Oh, okay, I'm safe. Everything's fine. It doesn't happen that often now, but it does occasionally happen. Sometimes I can't watch certain shows because they're so triggering. It's just, if they're too violent, if there's, sexual abuse going on, if there's things like that. I'm just like, nope, 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 big old nope. I'm going to nope out. Nope, you're on your own. Nope, that kind of thing. So yeah, you can still get triggered, but it isn't usually as intense. So in the beginning, when we first recognize our triggers, it's intense and it feels fresh and it feels like it's happening here and now. And that's because of the amygdala. So the more you work on your mental health, the more you work on the PTSD symptoms, the complex post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, the more you work on your triggers and know your triggers, the more you're able to recognize it and be able to pull yourself out of it. So it can last a lifetime, but it should get less intense the more you know yourself, the more you know your triggers, the more you work through them, the more you take the power away from them. So yeah, absolutely. That's why working on yourself is so important. What is narcissistic supply? I don't understand. Can you please explain that? All right. Narcissistic supply is what abusers need to survive. They need whatever it is they enjoy. And usually they're sadists, okay? They enjoy inflicting pain. They enjoy having power over someone. So they enjoy watching you suffer. That's narcissistic supply for them. That's why when you gray rock, you give them nothing. It's like, nope, you mean literally nothing to me. Nope, there's no, Because the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. So if you're like, no emotion, nothing, they're not getting any sort of jollies. There's no narcissistic supply. They enjoy watching you suffer. They enjoy watching you hurt. They enjoy you crying. They enjoy you being angry. Because what they do in their sick and twisted little minds is they sit back and they go, look what I made them do. Oh, look how powerful I am. I made them cry. I made them feel. I made them, whatever. And that's how they get their little jollies off. So yeah, so narcissistic supply is anything that lets the narcissist know that they are in control. So they like power, they like control, they like to make you angry, they like to make you cry, they want an emotional response from you. If you don't give them one, they got nothing. So you cut off their supply. So that's narcissistic supply. So you just don't play. When a narcissist invites you to play, you decline and you walk away. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. I have a family member that's doing the dying Hoover. This person has been dying literally for years. What do I do? You don't fall for it. It's like the little boy who cried wolf, Eventually he is going to die. He or she is going to die. But you stop with the drama and you stop with the running it to their beck and call. You just stop. It's like, okay, well, you've been dying for years. Okay. Again, you cut off their narcissistic supply. They do that. They do the dying Hoover or the medical emergency Hoover or the I'm sick Hoover or, something in order to elicit sympathy, in order to elicit guilt, in order to elicit, caring or loving. They do not like it when they're not paid attention to. Okay. So when they do the I'm dying Hoover and they've been dying for decades, it's because they're getting something from it. What's the payoff? You got to stop giving them the payoff. Again, you don't have to go see them. If you were not related to this person, would you have anything to do with them? If the answer is no, act accordingly. You are under no obligation to go visit, go see them, go talk to them. Nothing. And no amount of an inheritance is worth having to put up with that kind of BS. So yeah. So just be aware of that. So yeah, it's walk away. If you were not related to them, what would you have anything to do with them? If the answer is no, don't have anything to do with them. You don't have to. Okay. Why are narcissists terrified of aging and death? Why do they fight it tooth and nail? Because they're out of control. Because none of us really know what happens when we die. For sure. I mean, we've got some guesses. We've got some pretty good guesses. But they're terrified for a couple of reasons. One, there's a part of them that knows that they have done wrong. They do. They absolutely know it. They do. Everything they do is intentional. They know what they have done. Number two, they're out of control. They have no control over that. There's no control over that. Your number's up when your number's up, and there's no control over that. That terrifies them. Here's the thing. If somebody is truly faithful, faithful like God, faithful, you're not afraid of dying because you have faith. They don't, because they don't feel. They don't love. They don't have emotions the same way that we do. And it terrifies them to think that something or somebody is greater than them and that they have no control over it. So that's why it terrifies them. A healthy, normal person who does have a strong faith, they're not freaked out by it because they're like, yeah, and I'll either go to that great warehouse in the sky, review my life, and pick another lifetime, or I get to go be with God. Great. There's no fear. There's like, okay, kind of hate missing out on stuff, but, there's other things to do. So there's no fear. There's no fear. But with them, they're terrified because they're out of control. They don't like being out of control. They don't like knowing what's going on. They don't want to face the consequences of their actions. And as far as the fear of aging is concerned, many, many narcissists are somatic narcissists. So somatic narcissists are very concerned with appearances. So they are the ones who, dye their hair long after they should have stopped. They are the ones who go in for the plastic surgery and, oh, I gotta look young. Meanwhile, they're like in their 80s, and it's like, sweetheart, you're in your 80s. Stop. It's like, if it makes you feel good, okay, great. But if you're doing it because you have this illusion that you're going to somehow live forever, well, we got a problem. So yeah, they do it because they're somatic narcissists. Their body has to be perfect. There can't be any wrinkles. You can't have gray hair. You can't have, because it's a sign you're human. Oh God, that's a load of crap, because it's like, we're all human. We're all going to age. We're all going to die. You either do it gracefully or you fight it tooth and nail. I mean, it's kind of sad. My dad did that. He was dyeing his hair up until the day he died, and it was obvious and it looked awful, and we kept trying to tell him, we're like, Dad, it doesn't look good, just go with your natural white hair, it's pretty, but he wouldn't listen because he was, I gotta be young, I'm a Marine, I gotta be young, and it's like, well, you're not. So so they're terrified of aging because, again, a lot of their self-esteem, if they are somatic narcissists, comes from the physical appearance. They have to be in shape and beautiful and get compliments that way. And that's how they feed their supply. That's their narcissistic supply. So again, that's how they make themselves feel good. In that case, if they're somatic, they look for that compliment about their body, their face, their hair, their, whatever. They're looking for that. And that's why they do that, and that's why they're terrified of aging, and that's why they fight it tooth and nail. Why is borderline personality disorder so stigmatized? Well, a couple of reasons why is because there really wasn't a lot of research done into it until like the 1980s. So it's only relatively recently, when you think about it, that borderline personality disorder has been thoroughly explored. And when somebody is on the borderline spectrum, okay, when they're further down the line, they're very difficult to deal with. They're very difficult to deal with because now you're dealing with, okay, so the different types, self-harming types, which would be the quiet the quiet borderlines. So the quiet borderlines are the ones that take it out on themselves. They're easy to deal with. Hermits are kind of akin to the covert narcissist. So they do a lot of I'm a victim thing. I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim. That kind of thing. I do all of this for you. You don't do anything for me. They too are a little easier to work with. As you slide further down the spectrum, then you get the witch, or the queen and the witch. The queen is the Machiavellian one. Control, 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 control. Everything is a chessboard. Everything is a game. And then you get the witch, which is a sadist. And they enjoy inflicting the pain. Now, the problem with borderline personality disorder is, as it slides further down the spectrum, they've got not only all of the the maladaptive behaviors, trying to avoid being abandoned, all of that stuff. They've got traits of all the major personality disorders coupled with right on the line of psychotic thinking, because their thinking is literally crazy. So they will take something that you've said when they're further down the line, take something that you've said as a possible sign of abandonment, and they'll start grilling you on it. Why did you say that? And why did you do that? And why, and what did you mean by that? And da-da-da, and their thinking just starts spinning, and none of it's based in reality. So in the early days when borderline personality disorder was being worked with, and even when I was going through school, every single professor was just like, oh my gosh, you want to avoid them. They're really difficult to work with. And they are. They are very difficult to work with. Not impossible, but very difficult to work with. And it's because of the thinking. Because if you say the wrong thing in the wrong way, they will decide that you're going to abandon them, and then they start doing all the maladaptive behavior in order to not be abandoned. And you have to kind of bring them back down to earth. So that's why DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, is one of the best modalities for borderline, because they do one group a week and then one individual a week. So one group, one individual, one group, one individual. And it's for about a year, year and a half. And that's really one of the best modalities to help them get out of that automatic thinking, that psychotic thinking, where they've already decided what you meant by what you said, rather than, hey, hold on, I'm feeling this way. What did you really mean? Or did you really mean that? Because this is what I'm hearing in my head. They don't even have that thought process. It goes so quickly. It goes straight into the accusatory, you did this, screaming me, that whole thing, when they are further down the spectrum. So it's gotten a bad rap because, unfortunately, like I said, even when I was going through school, they didn't teach us how to deal with it. They didn't teach us, what's really going on here. They avoided personality disorders like nobody's business. Why? Because at the time, the people that do the DSM, the APA and other associations who are in charge of the DSM, they were having fights over getting rid of personality disorders. And thank God they didn't get rid of personality disorders, because it is a real thing, So, and because they were like, oh, we don't want to hurt their feelings. It's a very humanist thing. So here's the thing. Borderline personality disorder is a personality disorder. Can it be worked with? Yes. As long as the person with the disorder is willing to do the hard work. Borderline personality disorder is based in trauma. It is. And so if they are willing to work on themselves and do the hard work and do DBT and confront those early abandonment issues and put them back where they belong and work on responses to feeling abandoned, because a lot of times what borderline personality disordered people do, they rage. It's a preemptive abandonment. So I'm going to push you away and abandon you before you get the chance to abandon me, which leaves them very lonely. So it's got a stigma to it, because they are very difficult to deal with when they are further down on the spectrum. When they're down here and it's the hermit and the quiet, you can work with them. You absolutely can. When they get to the witch and the queen and the witch, a little more difficult, because they're more invested in being in power and control, and they sometimes are sadistic and enjoy, just like a narcissist, enjoy harming people. So that's why it's gotten, I think, a bad stigma, because a lot of therapists, I think, got, spit out into the system without having training in how to cope with them, or how to help them deal with this fear of abandonment, deal with the maladaptive behavior, the screaming Mimi, that kind of thing. It's like, teach them different ways, give them the tools to how to, and they're going to calm down. So, that's why I love DBT for that. So if I have a client that I suspect is borderline personality disorder, I talk to them about it. It's like, look, all of these behaviors speak to a fear of abandonment, and you need the tools to deal with that, because you're pushing people away. And you're a lovely person, and you're a loving person, and you don't want to be alone. So let's get you the help that will help you to not push people away, which would be DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, which is basically mindfulness. Why are you doing this? Where does this come from? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Why are you doing something that you know is going to push somebody away? Making you really start questioning your own motivations. So it's a good thing. So there's that. But that is why it has such a stigma. I remember early on in my career, I had one come in, and I was working with her, and I said, I gave her some suggestions for books to read and things like that. And she took her glasses off, and she held the page really close to her face. And so I said, well, they're also available on Audible in case that would help. Well, that was the wrong thing to say. And she turned around and she started screaming and swearing at me. How dare you? How dare you assume? Da-da-da. You think I'm stupid, blah, blah. And I could not calm this woman down. She had already decided in her mind what I meant by that. And all I meant is if you have a difficult time reading, like if you got any sort of eye issue, they're available on Audible. That's all I meant. But she was off and running, and oh my goodness, and I said, that's not what I said, that's not what I meant. let's talk about this. Nope, she decided, and she wound herself up and scream, couldn't get her calmed down. I ended the session because I was like, okay, we need to end the session. Let's try this again. She never came back. So, that's why they've got a reputation for being difficult, and sometimes you can't calm them down. Sometimes when they're so into that psychotic thinking, you can't calm them down because the voice in their head is telling them X, Y, and Z that's absolutely not true. So that's why they've got a reputation for being difficult. I think that's changed a lot in the last 30 years because now as people understand it's based in trauma, there's a reason that they're doing these behaviors. I think that's starting to change, which is good because they need to get help. If they get help and they work on the maladaptive behaviors, the mistaken thoughts and mistaken beliefs are able to stop the psychotic thinking before it starts, then they can live a relatively healthy, normal life. But if they don't work on it, they won't. So, and the ones that enjoy it, the ones that get off on screaming and raging and harming and hurting people, just like with the Machiavellian dark triad narcissists, you can't help somebody who enjoys doing that. They're toast. So that's why. I hope that explains that question. If you have any other questions, just, you can always IM me on Facebook. We need to talk with Chris Godinez on Facebook. And IM me your questions. So there that is. But do keep them short because I have a lot of people that do that. How are we doing on time? Okay. Can a person have both narcissistic personality disorder and borderline? Yes. You can be comorbid. Absolutely. You can have both because borderline has traits of all of them. If you watch them, when they go through their psychotic thinking, they show signs of paranoia. They show signs of narcissism. They show signs of, avoiding. So it's like they go through all of the major personality disorders, especially the further down on the spectrum they are. So yeah, you absolutely can have both narcissism and borderline, which I feel sorry for the people that have that because that's hard. That's really, if it's down at the lower end of the spectrum, you may be able to help them, but if they're over at the other end of the spectrum, not so much. So there is that. How do I let go of my therapist? I feel guilty. Ooh, never feel guilty for firing a therapist or anybody. So if you're working with somebody, whether that's a mechanic or whether that's a therapist or a massage therapist or, whoever, if they're not listening to you, you fire them. I'm sorry, this is not working out. Thanks for playing. Bye-bye. And you fire them. You can either do it in an email or you could do it in a voicemail or you could do it in person. So, you want to be careful doing it in person because if that therapist is a narcissist, for example, and a lot of therapists can be because they're attracted to positions of power, they'll try to manipulate you into staying. Now, again, sometimes it's good to talk it out with a therapist. I really felt like you weren't listening to me and then see how they respond. If you tell them what the issue is and they respond appropriately and are like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let's try that again. And then you work through it. That's one thing. But if you say, hey, I really felt like last time that you weren't listening to me and they get defensive or whatever, bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Get rid of them. So yeah, you want to be listened to. The whole point of going to therapy is so that people hear you and get you, so that you can get you, so that you can hear you, so that you can work on you. So yeah, you always want to give an opportunity for the therapist to make it right. But if after you've given that opportunity and brought it up and they don't correct course or they don't acknowledge it or they don't deal with it, then you fire them and you get a new one. Absolutely. Okay. How long do we think about our ex? I still have feelings. I miss him all the time. How do I make this stop? So you're going to. You're going to have feelings. You are going to miss them. You are. Because you fell in love with an illusion. Remember, they mirrored you back to you, and you thought you found your perfect match. So when that relationship ends, especially when they do the horrible devalue and discard, making you wrong for everything that they said was so wonderful about you, and then they discard you, it's horrible. It feels like your whole gut has been just ripped out of your body, your heart, your gut, your internal organs, yeah. And we still have feelings for this illusion that we fell in love with. But you got to realize that wasn't real. The real them was the terrible person that just ripped your innards out. That's the real them, because healthy, normal people do not seek to destroy other people. So what you do is you write out every rotten thing they ever did, and you remind yourself, this is who they really are. This is who they really are. This here is who they really are. Not this lovely illusion that I fell in love with. This is who they are. And then you put it somewhere where you can see it, so that when your mind goes wandering down that primrose path, and it will, because it's trying to encourage the endorphins, the dopamine, serotonins, et cetera, because that's how narcissists get us, is they do that intermittent positive rewards. So our brain is looking for that feel-good chemical. When your brain does that, it starts daydreaming about them, or wishing they were here, or gee, I miss them, or gosh, I still love them. You pull out that list of every rotten thing they ever did to you, and you remind yourself what they did, and that is the real person, not the illusion you fell in love with. And you grieve. You grieve. You grieve the loss of the illusion. You grieve the loss of who you thought you knew. And that's sad. So that person was never real. They're dead. They don't exist. The one who hurt you is the real person. So you just got to keep reminding yourself, grieve the loss, write out the reality of it. Don't fall for a Hoover, because that's what they play on. They play on that, oh, you're going to miss them. You know, and they play on that when they do the, hey, I was thinking about you and all the good times and I miss you and maybe we should get together for coffee. No, maybe you should go to hell. There we go. That works. You know, don't fall for it, because they don't change. They only get worse as it gets older, as they get older. Okay. Where did it go? I have a therapist that refuses to diagnose. It would help me to have a diagnosis. What do I do? You fire them. You just fire them. You explain to the therapist that it would help you to understand what's going on. So you fire them. If they're unwilling to say, hey, this is what I think is going on, here's the tools, here's the modality that would work. You know, a lot of humanists are very resistant to giving a diagnosis, because and I understand some of their thinking, because some of their thinking is, well, the client will then wear that as who they are. Well, some clients do, because they need an excuse, and it's, oh, well, I did that because I'm this way. You know, and that's another reason why borderlines get a lot of bad reputation or a lot of stigma attached, is because, oh, well, I've got borderline, so they use it as an excuse. You never do that. You never do that. You don't use anything as an excuse. Oh, I'm depressed, that's why I screamed at you. No, that's not going to fly. Sorry. You know, so some clients will try to use a diagnosis as an excuse for their behavior. So you talk it over with your therapist. It's like, look, if you really feel like having a diagnosis would help you, and in some cases it does. So again, when I've worked with people that have borderline personality disorder, I gently lead them into that and explain what it is and what happens and why they're doing this, and look how this is not working. So let's do something that does work. And once they understand that and they start investigating it, that gives them power. And now they're not like, why am I behaving like this? What the heck? You know? So if that's going to be the case, then talk to your therapist about it. If they're just like, no, I don't believe in diagnoses, fire them, get another one. Yeah. And then explain to your new therapist what you need. So remember, you're in charge, basically, in a therapy session, just like Diane and I talked on Sunday about how you're the boss. It's like you tell the therapist what you need, and then we guide you the way that, you know, is going to be the healthiest for you. And if we do something or don't do something, we have to explain to you why. We don't just go, oh, yeah, no, I don't diagnose. Okay, why aren't you diagnosing? Well, I'm afraid that you'll use it as an excuse for behavior, or I'm afraid that, you know, you'll make yourself wrong, or you give them an explanation. Clients deserve an explanation. So yeah, there it is. All right, how are we doing on time? You know, let me check. Oh, yep, I gotta go. All right, kids. All right, well, I hope that answered your questions. Next week on Sunday at noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be talking about, is forgiveness mandatory? Spoiler alert. No, it's not. You don't have to forgive, but we're going to talk about why, what forgiveness is, what idiot compassion is, what compassion is, what's going to help you heal, etc., etc., etc. So, is forgiveness mandatory? All right, so that'll be on Sunday. All right, kids, you guys be good, drink plenty of water, and I will talk to you later. Bye.